Okay. Okay, friends, I would like to welcome you to our third webinar on the TPC. Today, our guest is Laurice Levine. She is a Thalassemia Outreach Liaison, patient advocate, independent medical consultant. Laurice Levine has her Bachelor of Science in Human Development and Education from the University of California at Davis and her master's degree in Child and Family Studies from Syracuse University, New York. After she completed her education, she earned her Child Life Certification, which licenses her to do specialized clinical and psychosocial work with children in hospitals. Laurice worked at the University of California, San Francisco Benioff Children's Hospital, Oakland, as the Thalassemia Outreach Coordinator for 17 years before pursuing her independent medical consultant. She started at the LMBG Consulting Incorporation in 2016. Laurice is also a Thalassemia Outreach Liaison and patient advocate at Children's Hospital Los Angeles. She is 48 years old with transfusion-dependent thalassemia. She has been married for almost 16 years and she and her husband have a 5-year-old son. They have a dog and 2 birds as well. Welcome, Laurice. Please, you can take the floor. We can start.
Well, thank you everyone so much for joining. It's great to see people from all around the world, and I'm honored that you're taking some time out of your day to listen and share. Really honored. We all have a lot going on, and so thank you for taking the time. As it's a personal topic, obviously, and I'm hoping that people are comfortable sharing and asking questions as confidential as we can have a Zoom webinar, but I hope you'll be able to share. So I'll be talking today about navigating love, relationships, and thalassemia. And without further ado, my disclosures. So why, when I was approached by TIF, did I choose this topic? Based on, my experiences working, well, not only as a patient, I'd say love and relationships has been a really challenging aspect of my life. When I talk to families of newly diagnosed children, one of the first things they say is, can my child have a normal life? I put normal in quotes because I hate the word, and I'll address that later, but that's what they say. And they say, will they be able to get married? Will they be able to have kids? And a really common question I get now, usually in confidence when I'm talking to another patient or I see it online, is teens and older people saying, like, does anyone want to marry a thal? Thal meaning thalassemia, as we all know. But for those of you who don't have thalassemia, thal means thalassemia. Will I be able to get married? And so I think it's a really important topic to discuss. However, it's not often addressed because so it could be embarrassing. People are worried about privacy. There's a lot of cultural indications. There's stigmas around it. People are shy. And so we don't always talk about these things and get deep into what relationships entail. So that's why I chose to talk about this. There's all kinds of relationships, parent-child relationships, friend-friend relationship, but today I'm really going to focus on romantic relationships. And I love this quote, behind every happy couple lies 2 people who fought hard to overcome all obstacles and interference to be that way. Why? Because it's what they wanted. I think that people in relationships can relate to this. And even if you're not, you know that there's obstacles getting there. And you really want to have, you have to want a relationship to have a relationship. Also, just a quick shout out. My husband is joining us today. He helped me a lot with this presentation and a lot with my life. So I really want to dedicate this talk to him. And hello to my in-laws as well. So relationships and why they're important. Relationships start at the beginning of life. Even in utero, a relationship with the person who's carrying you begins, your mother. Or in a case of surrogacy, a gestational carrier. But they begin at the beginning of life. According to theorists such as John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth and others, attachment relationships with your primary caregiver, your mother or father, or the person caring for you as a child, influence relationships later in life. And I'm convinced that's true. During infancy, a baby develops an internal working model for how the world works. And so your relationships with your caregivers are building blocks for future relationships, your sibling relationships, your relatives, your friends, teachers, in our case, medical team, and then partners and spouses. So how your relationships work out, especially with your parents, will indicate a lot of how your relationship is with your partner. Also, Erik Erikson's theory of psychosocial development basically talks about the stages of development. So the first stage is trust versus mistrust. And that's basically, if you trust your primary caregiver, you'll have a trusting relationship going forward. And if you can overcome a conflict like trust versus mistrust, you can go on to the next stage. If you get stuck in a phase, eventually you'll have to work out those challenges. So how thalassemia influences a relationship is often, especially at diagnosis and infancy, and an infant may experience a lot of physical pain. Or at a young age, their parents might have to, for everyone who uses Desferal, poke them with a needle. And so you're learning that your primary caregivers can also inflict pain on you. Or if you're in a hospital and you get separated from your parents, let's say they have to go work to put food on the table and you're alone in the hospital, or a lot of different caregivers are taking care of you in a hospital, you might be learning about how scary people can be, how doctors and nurses, while they're not meaning to be scary, can terrify an infant or a toddler. So many of our first experiences are fearful and scary experiences. And that's our initial introduction to life. And so we have to overcome these issues, and that can affect how we deal with relationships. Attitudes regarding thalassemia. Parents during diagnosis in the first few years of life might be grieving a child they thought was going to be without thalassemia or healthy. They might be afraid to become attached to the child for fear that the child is going to die. In other aspects of parenting, they might be coddling the child or overprotecting them, not letting them experience the world. Children learn by doing and playing. And if someone's overprotective and stops that process, that could be a challenge. There might be a lack of discipline. There might be favoritism. So there's a lot of issues that are complicated in childhood for us. The attitude often is you can't do this like your brother or sister because you're sick. You can't go play soccer because you're sick. And that might lead to a victim attitude, like I can't do this. The I can't do this, I'm not normal attitude can be really damaging. Parents, if you're listening, your child is a child with thalassemia. They are a child first. They're not a thalassemic child. And so I remember when I worked at Children's Oakland, one of the advice that Dr. Vachinsky gave was love your child, play with your child, attach to your child. That's more important than any medical procedure right now. And that will influence them going forward in being self-aware and self-confident. So like I said, the challenges of living with thalassemia and developing healthy relationships is because of these challenges, we might develop an intense fear of rejection. I know that I did. Growing up, we're often rejected by society, turned down by jobs, even rejected by family. Sometimes our patient community isn't even supportive. And then we end up rejecting ourselves. We have this really an attitude that we're not normal, we can't do things, and we're not worthy. Going forward into relationships, might say, I don't deserve love. Who would want me? I'm ugly. I have scars. There's a lot of stigma around getting blood transfusions, even now in 2021. Unfortunately, safe blood is a lot to do with where you live, which is not fair and upsetting, but it's the sad truth. And there's a lot of challenges having kids, not necessarily this generation as much, but my generation, we were told that there was no way we would survive past the 13, let alone have kids or be able to get married. So you basically see yourself as unlovable, damaged goods, which is devastating. But this doesn't have to be our audio tape. As you know, thalassemics are really resilient and we can overcome these challenges. Basically, we have to work really hard on changing our mindset and how we think about our lives. So knowing that you're human and you deserve love, everybody deserves love, knowing that you're a whole person. Remember, we're more alike than different from other people. And everybody has something going on. Everybody has some sort of difference, whether it be, alcoholism or drug addiction, or there's divorce in the family, or there's discord, or somebody left, or someone in the family went to jail. I mean, we all have something. I've been working with families for nearly 30 years. And just when you think you've seen the perfect family, you find out something's going on. So no one is perfect. No one is our ideal of perfect. And I like to throw out the word normal. What is it? Everybody is different, whether that you look different or you act different, where you live. There really is no normal. And I know it's a societal construct to think of what is normal, but it doesn't exist, I don't think. And so I like to throw out the word. That's why I put it in quotes. Having to change the tape and saying you're smart and you're beautiful and you're worthy. And from what I know of the thalassemia community and sitting here today, people have done incredible things. It's hard though, but learning that others are going to view us as we view ourselves. And so really the first step to societal acceptance, I think, is self-acceptance. It's a hard road. Each generation makes it easier for the next. Several generations ago, they were experimenting on them medically to have, chelators. Now, a lot of the medical developments and the advances have been made. We have to really work hard on paving the way for the next generation so that we're accepted wholly. It's not going to be easy. It isn't easy, but it's worth it, and it'll make life easier for the future. And I know that we all care about that. So let's believe in ourselves and all that you are. Know that there's something inside you that is greater than any obstacle. I think you should hang that on your bathroom mirror and read it every day. So the foundation, I think, to every relationship is communication, along with trust and honesty. If you don't have that foundation, it's really hard to build a strong relationship. So a lot of people have asked about disclosure and when it's the right time to tell someone you have thalassemia. The first thing I'm going to say is there's no magic answer to that. There's no right answer. It really depends on you and your partner. I think, though, with the right person, there will never be a wrong time. So I'm going to share my personal experience, because I've tried every single way. And the only way it ever worked for me was when I told my now husband. But I tried telling people immediately, This is during like dating, and I've scared people off. I tried to let people get to know me before I would tell them about thalassemia. That backfired because they Googled me and found out I had thalassemia and then got angry I didn't disclose right away. I had all kinds of bad experiences. But when I tell you about my journey with my husband, when I told him, obviously it worked out. And he was the only person I ever told that I had thalassemia who knew what it was, which was amazing. But when you find the right person, there won't be a wrong time. If it goes awry when you tell someone you have thalassemia, then I don't think it was meant to be. So our expectations for relationships, we have fantasy versus reality and reality versus fantasy, especially with all the issues that we've talked about and the challenges we face. Oftentimes we think if we're unhappy with ourselves that someone will come and sweep us off our feet and all of our problems will go away and magically we'll be happy and self-confident and whole. That might work in the short term if you first fall in love and that someone sweeps you off your feet, but eventually our issues are going to catch up with us. And so we need to work that out. The reality versus fantasy is you have to accept yourself before you can completely accept another person. When I met my boyfriend, who's now my husband, I've tried pushing him away, and I've self-sabotaged so many times, especially when I get low. Even now, spoiler alert, he's never taken the out. But when I first met him, I said, you can do better than me. I'm have potentially terminal chronic illness. I mean, every horrible thing you could say about yourself, I've said. So it's not like I'm self-actualized and talking today. I mean, I still have challenges. It's a lifelong thing. I think intense, therapy helps. There's no shame in counseling, even though there's still stigma around it, especially in some of the parts of the world we're talking to today. And I'm sorry. And therapy is expensive. But if you can't afford therapy or you can't find a therapist, I'm sure that there's a friend out there who's willing to help and listen. I'm certainly willing to talk and share and listen. So reach out. It's hard. Even now, I think at every stage, like right before we got married, I said, this is your way out. You can leave even after when we were trying to have a child, and I'll get into that. I tried again. I said, if you decide you want somebody else, I'll let you go. I mean, it would devastate me, but I have literally tried everything because of little insecurities or big insecurities, but I'm getting better. But I've tried to give my husband an out several times. So just a little bit more about my personal journey. My infancy and childhood did not provide strong building blocks for future success. I wasn't transfused and I lived with a hemoglobin of 6.9. So I was a very sick kid. I was sick all the time. I had a 12-pound spleen. I was jaundiced and tired, and I was teased mercilessly, horrible teasing. No matter where you are in the world, there's always someone who's mean. I couldn't participate in sports, or I was forced to participate in like physical education. And when I couldn't do what the other kids were doing, like running laps, I was accused of being lazy. There was no communication in my household about thalassemia. I was told by my parents and siblings that my enlarged spleen was baby fat and that it would just go away. And then when I was 10, when I had to have surgery, I mean, obviously that kind of shook me up and led to trust issues. And I went into teenage years and young adulthood with terrible self-esteem and no confidence and painfully shy. I could not even look at the opposite sex in the eye. I was so shy and I just was depressed and I had no sense of self-worth. At the same time, though, I wanted to find love and companionship. It's what I wanted most, but I didn't feel like I was worthy. Has anyone else felt that way? So, how I kind of took control of my life was when I moved across the United States for graduate school. I had to take thalassemia into my own hands. I started getting blood transfusions and chelation, and then I got into advocacy work. And I think it's easier for me to use my voice to help somebody else. But in my advocacy work, I learned how to communicate and I learned how to have a voice for myself. And slowly, 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 I built confidence. Um, Overcoming fears and insecurities is a long, long process. For me, it's lifelong, but it pays off and it's working. So I think it helps to start using your voice. Your voice is worth being heard. So this is shocking, but the picture of my husband, or our wedding picture, disappeared since I must have well, there's always a technical glitch, isn't there? My husband and I were in the left corner, my left, and it was a picture of our wedding. So I don't know. I guess when I sent it, I must have accidentally, inadvertently deleted it. But he can wave. He's Matt Levine on the screen. So I met him through a friend, and she introduced us, and I could tell. I mean, he made it clear, and we made it clear that we wanted to have a relationship. We actually met each other a year before we re-met, and I guess my window was still probably closed at that time. And a year later, we re-met in the same place, and it worked out. So I told him about thalassemia on our third date. And he knew what it was and it worked out, but I could tell it was going to be a relationship and I didn't want it to go further without disclosing. So he knew what thalassemia was. And in the first, I'd say 2 weeks of dating, we talked about everything that most people never talk about. We talked about, my therapy. We talked about someone in the questions asked about um, mortality and end of life. We talked about that. I told him, I may not survive a long, long time. I didn't know at the time. I was 30 when I met him, and I never even thought I'd be here past 30. But he said, if you're on this earth, I want to be with you. It would be harder for me to be with you and lose you. I mean, it would be easy. He said, excuse me, I'd rather be with you and lose you than know you're on this earth without me. And I know that might sound corny, but it's true. So, but we talked about that. We talked about, I was told that I'd be a really high risk having children. We talked about him not being able to have, us not being able to have like a biological child in a traditional sense. We talked about everything and things that my friends who've been married for 25 years haven't talked about. So we dug deep, and I think that was important for us. We decided to keep going forward. There were definitely challenges. There was different issues talking about it with our parents, but they were accepting. We got married, and of course, I couldn't have a child in the traditional sense. So we pursued adoption. That was an obstacle because of thalassemia, I think, and eventually pursued surrogacy. And that could be a whole nother discussion, but I'm totally happy to share with you that journey if you have questions. So that was my journey. Oh, I guess I did something with that picture that you can see it now. So I think that was really one of the happiest days of my life. And I couldn't believe it happened because it was never supposed to. So how to find your person? Again, there's no magic recipe, but I think we have to acknowledge that you're worthy of finding that person. Be okay with being alone and enjoy your own company, because if you don't enjoy your own company, no one is going to enjoy it either. Do things that you like. And this is all pre-pandemic. I mean, don't go out and take a cooking class today because there's none. But when you want to meet somebody, if you pursue hobbies that you're passionate about and you like, you will meet people that share those passions and also enjoy doing those things. So whether it's cooking or hiking or a book club or joining a gym, you got to be active and put yourself out there, and you'll meet people. If you don't ever put yourself out there, there's no chance that you'll meet somebody, because if you're just home, you won't meet people. They're not just going to like come through your door. So you have to push yourself. I met my husband when I went out one night with a friend. I really didn't want to go out. I pushed myself. I forced myself. And it worked out. Before I met him, I tried online dating. I mean, the more dates you go on, the more chances will be that you'll find your person. It's just statistics. So being open to blind dates and being open to being set up. I know that in a lot of places they do arranged marriage, and I know a lot of people who have had a lot of success with that, and they're very, very happy. And so there's no one way to build a relationship. There's no right way, that there's a way for everybody. And the more you practice, practice makes progress, and eventually you'll find someone. We are used to pushing ourselves as thous, and we're really good at this. So you have to force yourself sometimes to get out there, but it's important to do it. Some kind reminders. Please try to believe in yourself. And I can't say this enough times. If you don't believe it, you have to say it so many times, or ask some of your friends to remind you. Don't be shy to say, hey, I need some encouragement. Could you please send me an email with all the things that you like about me? I know someone who did that and it worked. And write yourself an encouraging note. Everybody has a fan, a sibling, but try to send yourself those good messages. I think sometimes we think we're passive in relationships and we wait to be chosen, but you have to remember it's your choice too. It takes two people to choose each other, not one person. And it may feel like no one's choosing me, but we also have to choose. It's your choice also. Remember that everyone has some baggage. Everyone has something. No one's perfect. At the same time, you don't want to settle. If you have doubts, trust your instincts and your gut. Don't settle if there's red flags, or if someone doesn't treat you well, or says nasty things, or is abusive in some way. You can't settle for that. So please remember that. Write down a list of what qualities you're looking for. Is it sense of humor? Is it brown eyes? If not, this might be superficial, but some people have a type. Is it someone who can make you laugh? Is it someone who likes to travel? Write everything down, and then pick out the things that are musts, things that are maybes, and there's things maybe you can live without. I think there's no person that's going to have like 150% of the things that you want, but there's certain things that you will not settle for less than. So know that going into it, write it down, be familiar with the qualities that are with what you like about people. Also, write down things that you like about yourself, what qualities you have to offer. Remind yourself of all of your positive attributes and traits and strengths, and what you can offer in a relationship, because that's a good reminder and believing in yourself. Remember, I know that especially my generation, having children is a challenge. And women especially feel inadequate if they cannot carry and birth a baby. It was hard. I felt guilt when our adoption didn't work out. I felt like it was all my fault. And so when I had obstacles or challenges, I backslide into I'm not worthy. And so, but now we have this amazing, amazing son that he came into our life via surrogacy. And and now I know that all those struggles were worth it, because if it was any other way or any other child, it wouldn't be my son. So surrogacy worked out. But know that there's different ways to build a family, and the way you do it is the way that it's supposed to be for your life. And I think some people think, oh, if you don't have a child, you're less of a mom or less of a dad, but that's not true. That child will see you as their parent, and it doesn't matter what other people think. It only matters about what your family feels, and that's going to be love. So the scariest part of all is intimacy and thalassemia. It's a topic that people have approached me about on the sly. They can't talk about it in their culture, or it's embarrassing. Intimacy, especially, is terrifying for a lot of people, not just people with thalassemia. But I think when you have our challenges, it's even more terrifying. Oops. I have a huge spleen scar. It's from my sternum to my navel, and it tripped me up, and it made me feel horrible about myself. And I have scar tissue and lumps and bumps and bruises and blown veins, and all the things we have to go through, and being poked and prodded and having ports or PICC lines, and can mar and mess up your body image and lead to so much shame and embarrassment and stigma, especially in a world with models and supermodels and movie stars. And so you really, really get feeling horrible about yourself. At least I did. I had to communicate about that. There's no way to be intimate with someone and hide thalassemia. At least I couldn't, because like, gee, what's that on your stomach? But it's amazing that someone who loves you will love you for every single scar and poke and lump on your body. And after a while, it's not so scary, but it is terrifying at first. Depending on your own comfort level, you set your boundaries according to what you're comfortable with, and don't change that for anybody. You have to feel good about yourself. And so sometimes with thalassemia, for anybody, you have to go at your own pace, and don't rush, and don't be pushed, and do what you're comfortable with. And when you're comfortable with it, you set your own timing. And the right person, like for everything, will be accepting, and they just don't care. You have to imagine, if the person you love with all your heart has a scar, you're not going to reject them, and it's the same way. So with time and trust, intimacy will be comfortable. The tricky part too is people say, we talk about disclosure and when to tell somebody you have thalassemia. And I think that when you receive blood products, you're obligated to talk about thalassemia at some point and disclose, especially because, there still is a risk with getting blood and having diseases, which is rare, but at least here, we're very lucky in the US, but that still, I felt like I had to disclose, because I do receive blood products, and there's always a bit of a risk. That's just my opinion, and it might not work for everybody. And so we talk about overcoming body shame and building confidence. Like I said, it's so, so challenging, especially when you're always jabbed. And remember, this is scary for everybody, your partner included. I think we think that everybody else is confident and has no fear, but it's not true. I've talked to males and females extensively about all this, and insecurity riddles everybody. Males, females, all of it. Everybody has some insecurity. But like I said, when you love someone, your comfort level will increase. Um, and this takes time, sometimes a lifetime, but I think we can overcome it and realize, wow, our bodies are incredible. They work so hard for us to be alive that actually it's inspiring to most people that we've been through so much. And I've had people tell me scars are like battle wounds, and you can see someone's strength through their scars. So maybe we can look at it in a different way. Get rid of the dream and keep the keep the dream, get rid of the fairy tale. So hopefully relationships are lifelong and marriage is your one and only, but it takes a lot of work. It's not always pretty or fun. They can be challenging, and relationships, like everything in life, need maintenance and repair and work. It's not something that you can slack off on. And so it's not always a Cinderella movie. It's never that way. And but it's the best thing in life, one of the best things in life for some people. And you know, my husband is the best thing that ever happened to me. He accepted me wholly, and has helped me build up my confidence. And he's my biggest fan and my biggest cheerleader, and I'm so grateful. So when you find someone, you know, a lot of these issues and fears will go away. But it takes work, and you know, you might break down, but then you build yourself up. We're a very resilient community, and you'll get through the challenges. I think communication is really important. Don't assume that your partner knows what you want or what you need. Sometimes we just wish that someone would, you know, say the right thing at the right time, or do the right thing, or surprise us the right way. And they're not mind readers. And I'm really good at you know, thinking about what I want and not saying what I need or want. So it's important to communicate. It's important to communicate about all the issues surrounding thalassemia, and it takes practice like everything else. So if you need someone to mix your meds, or if you need someone to remind you, or if you want company at the hospital, don't expect that they'll know that. You have to tell them. It's hard to, when you don't think you're worthwhile and you don't think you're worth getting your needs met, but you most certainly are, and your loved one wants to make you happy. Just like I want to make him happy. I want to do everything I can to make him happy. And I do that. So I had my husband read my presentation, and since he's an editor, he makes everything look pretty, but he also had some good advice for you. Be willing to accept positive feedback. Don't beat him or her down when he tells you you're beautiful or tells you you're handsome. I prefer beautiful rather than handsome, but I can be really good at deflecting compliments. And that means you're just pushing your partner away and pushing their compliment away. They want you to accept their love. So it's important to accept those compliments, and not deflect them or reject them, because then you're rejecting your partner's love and affection. So that's obviously something I still need to work on, since that was his first piece of advice. Remember that you're worthy of love. Know that you contribute positive things to your relationship as well, where it's a two-way street. You each give, I don't even like 50-50. I like you each give like 100 and 100. You each give fully. Accepting help. Sometimes with thalassemia, we try to do everything ourselves and we try to overcompensate for what we think we're lacking. And so we tend to overdo, and I say we, but I'm talking about myself as well. I do that a lot. So accept help. Stop trying to prove yourself. You're good enough and you contribute beautiful things to your relationship. It's important to remember that. You contribute, you don't have to prove anything, especially like in any relationship, in friendships, in jobs, in love. We're always trying to overcompensate as thals, and it ends up exhausting you. So if you can help that, try not to. Don't push someone away, especially at first. If they want to be with you, they'll pursue you. And if you want to be with them, accept it. Parents, again, I'm talking to the parents out here. Know that you play a really important role in your child's love life. Your relationship with your child will lend itself to their future relationships, like I said earlier in the presentation. So encouraging your child and cheering them on and telling them to try new things and encouraging friendships, building confidence and being there for them in a stable and loving way. I know there's things you have to do to your child that are uncomfortable, especially if they're on Desferal or medicine, and you can do that and explain it in a way that you're doing it because you love them and you want them to be healthy. And sometimes being healthy hurts. Sometimes being healthy, sometimes taking care of your body hurts, or medicine tastes bad even though it helps, but there's ways to do it. But try to be really present and know that your relationship with them is going to, determine their future. I was told, you're bad at this, you're bad at that, or not recognized for things. And that was very damaging, but also given lots of love. So I had a lot of love to give. Knowing your parents are doing the best with what they have and when they have it. And so even though there were challenges in my childhood, I know that my parents did the best they could with the knowledge they had at the time in their lives. And they made decisions based on love. And you can't hold someone, you can't have a grudge for that. If they're making a decision based on love, even though it might not be the right decision later, they did it with good intentions. So know that decisions you make for your child are very hard, but you're doing it with the information you have, with the resources you have, and with good intentions and love in your heart. And that's as good as you can do as a parent. There will be a lot of stumbling blocks. Parenting is much harder than it seems. So I want to talk a little bit about attitude. It's everything. A positive attitude is going to start with us. There was a question about why do we get, why is there such a stigma on people with chronic illness and thalassemia? Why do we get turned away for jobs and friendships and sports and everything and love? And their only way that's going to change is with us. We have to have a positive attitude and advocate for ourselves and use our voice. It might take a decade or 2 or 3, but we have to do it. It's change is not going to happen overnight. There's always going to be mean people. There's always going to be haters, but we have to be confident in what we can contribute and know that we pave the way for the future. So it might be really challenging for us, but everything you do, you're going to make it easier for somebody else coming after you. But we have to change our attitude to change society's attitude. So everyone deserves love, and so do you. I like this quote. Love isn't always perfect. It isn't a fairy tale or a storybook, and it isn't always easy. Love is overcoming obstacles, facing challenges, fighting to be together, and holding on and never letting go. In a short word, easy to spell, difficult to define, and impossible to live without. Love is work, but most of all, love is realizing that every hour, every minute, and every second was worth it because you did it together. So know that it's something that it's worth fighting towards and fighting for and hanging on to. And you most certainly deserve it, and you're worthwhile, and you're beautiful, and you have a lot to give. So that's where I close and stop for now. I love questions. I'm gonna show you the questions I got before this.
Yeah,
There were some medical questions, but we'll just address the ones that pertain to the topic.
yeah, if I may say something, Laurice. Now, Laurice will answer the questions that have been sent to us with the registration. Yet, if anybody, these questions will be read without mentioning any name. Yet, if there's anybody else who wants to ask more questions, they can use the chat. Yet, you have to know that using the chat is not confidential. Anybody can read the questions and can read the name of who have posted this question, who have asked this question. So it's up to you to ask, and we will do our best to answer every question before we finish. Okay, now please, Laurice.
If love relationship isn't success, I wrote it exactly how I received it. So they're asking really about if it's not successful, and there's the patient's getting negative feelings towards them, I think, for being a patient, what's the best way to deal with that? So obviously I talked about, developing a relationship and a successful relationship, but we all know that there's failed relationships. I don't like to really say failed relationships. It's just relationships that don't work because you realize this isn't my person. And I'm thinking this question has to do with that is what happens if they're not happy that you're a patient or they have issues with thalassemia. Well, then I would say that it's time to end that relationship. It's not, if someone's really anti-thalassemia, I don't think they're going to then be okay with it all of a sudden. So it might start with they don't understand it. So you have to explain what it is and that you're living successfully with it. You have a job and all that, and that you can do hobbies, hikes, whatever you want to say about yourself. But if they still, because there are going to be questions. I mean, my husband and I had, he had questions, of course. His family had questions. We talked, like I said, we talked about everything. If after those questions are answered and they're still not accepting of you, at some point, then you're going to have to cut them loose because it's probably not going to work out. And know that if the relationship ends, it's not a failure. It just wasn't your person. And that relationship is a building block for the one that will work out. I feel like every relationship happens for a reason, and that you learn different lessons from different people. You learn, from a bad date or a terrible blind date or a good blind date, but it didn't work out. But you pick up lessons from that and you take it to your relationship. And so it's not a failure, it's experience, and experience is always worth something. I hope that answers your question. If not, then I've provided my email, and you can always email me and we can talk more. The second thing is, what's the percentage of thal people who got married and the ratio of thal couple, thal and thal, like two thals meeting or a thal and non-thal? Okay, so we don't even have a clear database of how many thals are in the world. TIF is getting, has some database, but in the US, we don't even have a clear database. So there's not been a study on how many people are actually married. It would be worthwhile, and so that would be a good thing pursuing. I know a lot of thals who are married though, and I know most people who are married to a non-thal. I know of a few couples that are two thals, and I know that there's a program in India called Thal Matrimony, and it's a matchmaking service for thals. And I think there's a lot of benefits to being with someone who has thal. They get it. There's no explaining. And It makes it a little bit easier. But because we're rare, there's just not a lot of people with thalassemia. And so the chances are that you're going to meet a non-thal. But there's no statistics. There's no given statistics. But most thals I know who are married have been successful. I know of just a couple that might have been divorced. So we're pretty successful. I know that we have a lot of grit and a lot of persistence. So if a relationship is challenging, we're not the first people to give up. And so I think that makes for successful relationships. The other part of the question is how to manage life expectancy. That's a great thing. So earlier in my talk, when I talked about communication and disclosure, my husband and I talked about life expectancy, and that continues to come up and be a topic for us because of ever-changing technology and the work of like organizations such as TIF. Our life expectancy is increasing, and we don't know. So that's part of it, is saying, I don't know, but my promise to my husband was, I don't know how long I'm going to be here, but I do promise you, I'll do everything that I can to take good care of myself. I'll do everything I need to do, take all I've always been super compliant, but I made that promise and I'll keep it. And so you can say, you have no control of how long we're going to be here. We have control though of compliance, and that will lead, and adherence, and that'll lead to a longer life expectancy. We even talked about it at the beginning of the pandemic. I said, I already have to go to the hospital for blood. I'm already going to be the one at risk. We have a son. One of us needs to stay safer. So I double mask. I do everything I'm supposed to do, but I decided, and he agreed, that I'm the one to go out because I already have to go to the hospital. So I'm the one that does our essential shopping, because I want, if something happens to him and then I'm the one that has thal, I feel like there's more of a risk for my son. It's a tough topic to talk about. It's very hard, but it's very necessary. So I think how to manage it is just open and honest and reevaluation. And then other part of the question was, what are the parameters to evaluate if a person's ready to get married? As some people are not mentally prepared or not mature enough to take responsibility. Very right. You probably won't end up with someone long-term that's like that, because it just will fizzle out. I think you'll know when you're ready because you won't be scared. I wasn't scared to get married. I wasn't some nerves are expected, but I wasn't scared. If you have second thoughts or doubts or red flag meaning I don't really like this. This doesn't feel comfortable. This doesn't feel right. Why am I doing this? Then you'll know. I think your gut feeling, your instinct is on target for that. If someone else is immature, you're not going to want to be with them. They just won't commit. I think commitment issues or, playing games or sabotage, those are things you'll know when they're not ready. And when they are, then they'll be mature and they'll want to take responsibility. I hope that helps. But there's no list of parameters. I think it's different for everybody. And a lot of it is just instinct. That's my experience. Why is it difficult for people to understand us and accept us being different, especially for marriage and jobs? So there's mean people everywhere. And I think people who are generally there's a lot of weaknesses in the humankind. And I think people are hungry for power, and they rise up when they put other people down. If they're insecure, they don't feel like they have enough merit or enough qualities to give to other people without bringing someone else down. And the person they're going to bring down is the person they see as weak. And since we have a health issue, we're seen as weak, which isn't true. We're probably stronger than most. And so I also think that people have a lot of pain in their lives. And if they're not accepted or they're unhappy, then they're going to make you unhappy. And so it's them and it's not you, even though it seems like you and they're making it about you, but it's really their own insecurity and their own self-hatred. There was someone who was, mean at the park to a kid. We were watching these kids be mean at the park. And I said to my son, he's probably mean because maybe he's missing his parents or maybe he's hungry. There's usually a reason why someone's acting out. But it's not you, and it's a change in attitude. So like I said, we have to change our attitude and others will follow, but some people are never going to catch on and they're just always going to be like that. And those are the people you don't want to be around. But it's hard and it's difficult and it's painful. And I'm sorry that you've experienced that pain. When the fourth question from my experience, when to tell your partner about thalassemia? Is it before going into relationship or after? I think disclosure and telling someone about thalassemia is something you can't hide, and especially from a partner. It's impossible. It would be a life filled with lies. You couldn't hide it permanently. It's up to you whether you want to tell someone immediately or wait till they get to know you, like I talked about earlier. It's different for everybody. It's definitely necessary. And I think if it's before going into relationship, as you see a relationship starting, and if it feels comfortable, then disclose. It's a lot less work to be open and honest. It's really hard. I've known people to hide it from the world, and it's tough. And it is something that their families are going to probably, especially if you live with your family or you're in close range with your family, families are going to know. So we told our family, my husband told his family when he found out. He needed a sounding board, so he told them, but it's definitely something that needs to be done. This person goes on to say, I personally raised my son, that thalassemia never defines him. That's excellent. How can we make this a balance? In my country, families are involved with marriage. So you spend years normalizing thalassemia, and then you put him in a spot where he's going to have a chance to be rejected. And no parent wants their child to be rejected. It's, I think, more painful for the parent to see your child get rejected than it is for the child, and it's painful for them. And I guess where there's no risk, there's no reward. And so there probably will be a time when he's rejected, because it seems to be a thing for all of us. You can't control that, but the way you're raising your son, you are equipping him with the skills he needs to overcome that. So you're giving him confidence and self-love, and that will help him overcome rejection should he ever face it. And that's all you can do is give them the tools they need to survive. I wish I could say you could zap that person with a magic wand or change people's thinking, but it's hard.
Okay, Laurice, I think we need to go ahead. We have questions here, and we are going to ask if our friends want to ask any more questions. There is something like raise your hand, and they can ask their questions online or just immediately. Now, we have so many messages thanking you and praising you, commending your courage to talk about yourself, because so many times, like Thals, don't like to talk about themselves, about these things. But there is one or two questions that we need to read. There's a question says, thank you for presentation. What do you advise to thalassemic patients want to marry a partner, but the family of the normal person is against this marriage?
And so what, could you reread that?
Okay. It says, what do you advise thalassemic patients want to marry a partner, but the family of the normal, like the normal person, is against this marriage.
Oh, yeah, that is really painful. I would say if the person who is in the relationship is accepting but not their family, then they're going to have to work with their family, because if you but still want to pursue it, then you want to do that and not break up because of the family. However, if they don't ever reach acceptance, it's going to be hard, because when you're marrying a person, you're also kind of marrying their family in a sense, and you can't ever, change that. So I would find out what it is they're fearful of and address it head on. Is it the fact that kids are an issue? Is it a stigma about getting blood? I think it's time to sit down and have a big talk. And if that's what breaks you up, it's a tragedy, and it's really their loss, and it's painful, and that may happen. But know that it's challenging. And if the partner still wants to be with you, then they're going to have to kind of stand up to their family and advocate for you.
Okay,
There's no easy answer for that.
There is sort of a thank you message, but I think it's worth reading. Maybe you want to comment on it. It says it's very difficult for thalassemic. Moreover, it would be more difficult to keep present status, but you did. In motivational, inspiring, big challenge to overcome this society who still see the thalassemic with an ugly eye.
It is. It's really, really hard. And that's why I said it's a very long, arduous, hard process to change how people think. And even in the United States, I think people hide behind political correctness, but they get nasty and they aren't accepting, and they're not outright rude, but there's definitely hardships. It's terrible. And thank goodness organizations like, TIF exist for advocacy and education and awareness. I think the more people learn, the more they can accept. Everyone's scared of something they don't know about, or that lacks familiarity, but it is challenging. It's challenging. Thank you for the feedback.
And here we have a reply to a previous question. The first question we asked from the chat. It says thalassemics should speak with the partner. It's with a question. Does that concerned person partner can go against his or her family to be with the concerned person? If she does not have strength to stand by the concerned side, is she or he worthy to be it? If someone loves me, he can or should convince anyone. It is just my opinion.
Yeah, that's why I said, earlier, the partner is going to have to talk to their family. I know people who have had to stand up to their family for, there are different races, let's say, or there's same-sex marriage. There's, besides thalassemia, there's so many things that people are against. And I know people who have had to cut their families off because of anything from differing political views to racial tension to, homophobia. It runs the gamut. And sometimes you get to that point where the family can't be reasoned with, and you love the person you love and you want to continue the relationship. And love is worth fighting for. I would much rather have my partner than I hate, my family. My partner is everything. My husband is everything. I would do anything for him. So at this point, if I had to break off with my family because I didn't like him, that would be on them, not me. That's their loss, because he's an amazing person. So I'm with you.
Okay, we have another comment or question. Laurice, I think you are very lucky to have loving husband. Don't worry what others can think. I am father of 24 years thalassemia major son from Nepal, and we always care him a lot. Now I'm in India, Delhi, for treatment for his adrenal tumor, 10 centimeters big, and on Wednesday, he gone through surgery and is success to remove. So as a father, we are also worried for his future. You know what I'm going to ask. Don't know what he's going to ask. So what? So I don't know what he's going to ask. Do you have an idea?
Could you read that again? If I don't see something, it's like hard for me. I got stuck at the surgery. I was mentally thinking,
Okay.
I hope he does well.
Okay. Laurice, I think you are very lucky to have loving husband. Don't worry what other can think. I am father of my 24 years thalassemia major son from Nepal, and we always care him a lot. Now I'm in India, Delhi, for treatment for his adrenal tumor, 10 centimeters big. And on Wednesday, he gone through surgery, and it is success to remove. So, as a father, as parents, we are also worried for his future.
Okay, I get it now.
To ask, I think.
Sure. So first of all, getting a son to 24 in Nepal is a feat. So congratulations on that. Nepal has so many challenges just getting transfusions, and I commend you for that. You're amazing. So as for, you know, is he worthy of marriage and marriageability? Of course. Like, I know a lot of women in Nepal who would probably love to be with your son. And it's really hard we worry about our kids no matter what. And, but the fact that you've gotten so far tells me that, you know, and you love him so much, he obviously has the tools he needs to find a mate, find a partner. And I would encourage him to go out and meet people and date and get that experience. There's nothing, you know, he could lose. You've already given him a lot of love that he can give to somebody. And it sounds like you'll be a very accepting father to the person he chooses.
Okay, we have a little note here. After thanking you for the wonderful session, rejection always temporary and the state of mind. What do you say for that?
Yes, rejection is temporary. When you heal. I mean, I've been rejected so many times in so many ways, even by my own siblings, and pain. I mean, time heals wounds. It really does. You do heal. It is temporary. So knowing that helps you get through it, is knowing there's someday you're not going to feel terrible. Someday you will feel better. Helps get through anything. And we know that with Thal, like, you're going through surgery, you know you're not always going to have pain. You know you're going to get to the other side. And you push yourself, but it is temporary, thank goodness. And you're not alone. Like, we have a strong community of people who want to support each other. So lean on other Thals. Don't be afraid to talk about it. Don't be afraid to reach out and say, I need some help. I just, you know, broke up with someone, I got rejected, or I lost a job. Like, don't carry that pain alone. You now have my email address. I'm happy to provide support. That's what I love doing. And so don't feel like you have to get through it alone.
Okay, now if anybody wants to add something, if you want to react, if anything, someone can raise his hand. We have George Costantino now. He can unmute his microphone, and please.
Lorenz, just basically to say congratulations. That was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
I think you've captured most of the things that really trouble us all. just a couple of things, if I may. One is that when you talked about no communication in your household when you were growing up, that is usually a fundamental problem with many people. And there is, if you analyze it, there's many reasons behind it. One is that it's lack of understanding, lack of knowledge, lack of, fearful, and many people think that their sons or daughters are going to die anyway, so why make it more difficult? So there is lots of reasons if you go into it. My question is, what can we do here for us as organizations or as patients? What can we do to try and, in a way, eliminate that? Encourage it not to, get rid of it if we can. That's one question. And the other question is a statement, really. We must all remember that about 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ago, people with thalassemia used to die. They used to go yellow, they used to go dysfunctional, and eventually they would die. And that is what many people know when you say thalassemia. So we've got to understand that their rejection or fear or whatever you want to call it, it's substantially factual, because we haven't yet started changing their attitude. We are doing that now by all of us still being alive at 45, 50, 60. That is beginning to change people's attitude, but it's still not the same case, for example, in India or in Pakistan or in Nepal. So it's important for us to understand that the most important thing that we have to do is to keep educating people. And the same with the parents. Sorry, I'm taking too much time. But
no, you're not at all. You're not at all.
The same with parents rejecting me because I have thalassemia. Well, put yourself in their shoes. If you had a daughter and she came home and said, Dad, I'm going to marry this guy who's thalassemic, what would you think immediately? You will say, oh my God, no, please, but that's expected. So the best thing you need to do is to educate. That's the only solution. For me, there is nothing else. Like you educated your husband, like you educated your in-laws, that's the only way to go about it. Thank you.
I totally agree. And that actually, that's, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's the education is the only way we change our attitude and education, because you're right. And we've lived through the 15 years ago when people were dying left and right. We remember that. It's hard to get rid of it. And so even having like videos of success, having literature about success stories, I think is really important, so that people can see that people are surviving and thriving. And that's really educate them on how thalassemia has changed. And I mean, I was talking to Roy earlier. TIF has prolific resources and such a prolific reach. It's amazing. And you're right, it's education's really, really vital. Great point.
Okay, one more question we have here. Love solves all issues, and unloving relationship makes everything an issue. Love based on respect and dignity. Whatever your relationship status is, love and acceptance, accept yourself wholeheartedly. You can be happily single or happily married. Its own choice. I wish you all the best. Adam, is there any comment on that? And love is unpredictable for everyone. Now they understood to some extent after pandemic.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's why I said, like, you have to be happy with being with yourself also, and be in good company. I mean, I was single for a long time, enjoying things and doing things. You know, you don't want to, life is so precious. So whether you're single or with someone, you always want to be fulfilled and happy doing the things you love to do, with or without somebody. And knowing that, you know, you have friends, there's lots of different relationships. And, you know, we talked about romantic today, but, you know, friendships and siblings and all kinds of things, patient to patient. There's so many people that can keep us company. We've all experienced loss, and we know that's painful, and we know how to navigate through it. But we're not alone. We know that we're not alone. Is that any more questions, or?
And if anybody wants to raise his hand, we can ask him, or mute and unmute, and or for those who's not on camera, they can mute, unmute their mic. We will know they want to say something, they want to ask a question. Now, one last note I have here. Yes, yes, India, still in some cities, same thinking, and senior is going on with acceptance in treatment and in relationship. But I believe, and trust session like this give more insight to and motivation. Thanks to TIF for entering for an entire team. Okay. I know if you want to answer something about the same thinking and seen is going with acceptance and treatment in relationship. I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Say the last thing again, Anton.
Okay, it says here, I mean, I'm not going to read the thank you. I say yes, India, still some cities, same thinking, and senior is going on with acceptance in treatment and in relationship. And
yeah, there's healthcare disparity is something that is a whole nother talk, and it's something I write about pretty consistently when I write, you know, medical reports, and when I talk to pharma and industry in this country. Disparity is something I'm chronically on the loudspeaker about, because it bothers me so much that just because I live in the United States, I can get safe blood and access to chelation. And, you know, if somewhere else in the world, there's most places where it's needed most, that therapy doesn't exist. And so I'm very acutely aware of the disparity. It's upsetting and devastating, and it's not fair. And it's, like I said, something I talk about constantly. So obviously, if you're not getting adequate treatment, it's really hard to think about, you know, having a relationship if you can't get, you're wondering where your next transfusion is coming from, or if you're going to have enough chelators to survive. And so we talk about survival, and then, you know, relationships. You can't do relationship if you're in survival mode. If you don't, people who are starving aren't really, you know, caring about fashion and ridiculous things. So obviously, you know, it's upsetting, and it's something we have to navigate and work towards. And so I realized in India, you know, there's a lot of stigma. I mean, I read about it all the time on Facebook. There's, you know, a lot of stigma. And it's so you know, it's obviously a lot of work for a patient to educate. There's more education that needs to be done, and it's a lot of work. So I validate that experience, and hopefully we can work together on making it better. And I want to echo my gratitude to TIF for letting me speak today, and for the amazing work they do. It's unbelievable what one organization has put out. It's so if you haven't checked out their resources, you know, please do it. It's an amazing, inspiring organization that does so much, and especially for those who are underserved.
Okay, any more questions before we finish? Social participation, opportunity, improvement, inclusion, and education can make perfect thalassemic life. What is your opinion, please? Just came in.
What makes a perfect thalassemic life?
It's social
Oh,
participation,
I see.
community empowerment,
Perfect. Yeah.
inclusion, and education.
Oh, definitely. Those are all unbelievable things. I mean, obviously, social participation, getting involved in the things you love, and opportunity and power. Those are, I agree. I completely agree. I know most thals are very fulfilled and in what they do. And I agree with you, that is important. And when you are participating and in doing things you love and using your strengths, it definitely is empowering. And when you're empowered, you can, you know, conquer a lot of things. So excellent attitude.
Okay, any more questions before we finish? Okay, no more questions. Manal, we want, Manal, sorry. Laurice, we want to thank you very much for
Yes.
this session. We want to thank our audience for the lovely time they spent for their questions and participation. I want to thank Rawad for preparing this session and working hard for it. And thank you all for being with us. We hope to see you in other sessions, and maybe hopefully we will be able to do a little bit more or more sessions. Thank you very much, and good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you,
Good
Laurice.
night. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurice.
Thank you, everyone. Be well, be
Thank
safe.
you, Maurice.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you, Laurice.
Thank
Was
you.
well done. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laurice.
Thanks, Kathy.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Good night for you, for everyone, and good morning to Laurice.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Roy and Anton. I really appreciate you letting me do this. And thank
George.
you for all your, and George, there you are. My screen now is opening up. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Okay.